If anyone had asked the nurses on duty at Oasis Medical Center, most would have sworn that Nurse Rebecca was the most diligent among them. She had a reputation for working the hardest, always there to volunteer for double shifts, her crisp white uniform almost a second skin. But behind that calm exterior, behind those rimmed glasses and clipped manner, lived something twisted, a hunger for chaos, a quiet delight in sowing confusion and sorrow, so subtle nobody would suspect. It was a rainy night, the kind Lagos had when the clouds gather all day and pour their misery in sheets as if the world was about to be washed clean. But inside the hospital, life was entering the world, one fragile breath at a time. On the second floor, two women screamed almost in unison. Both in the VIP suite, Florence Okiki, the graceful wife of a billionaire architect, clung to her husband's hand, her hair plastered to her brow. The other, Ngozi, a quiet girl whose only companion was her mother, wrung the sheets and bit back her pain. She had no business being in the VIP ward, but the lack of space and urgency of her situation had made the nurses on duty bring her to the VIP ward. Both labored for hours, fighting the storm inside and out, until finally two babies cried into the world only minutes apart, a girl and a boy. The light in the clinic immediately went off. "Why is the backup generator not coming on?" the doctor shouted. "We need light here." The nurses present brought out their phone while Nurse Rebecca collected the children. Little did they know that she had swapped the babies before handing them to their mothers. But that night, when the new fathers celebrated with drinks and soft prayers, when the nurses congratulated each other on another smooth delivery, little did they know that two destinies had been swapped. Nurse Rebecca's heart thumped as she wheeled the two newborns into the quiet nursery. Nobody noticed her odd little smile and the mischievous grin on her lips. Another successful swapping, she said to herself. This wasn't her first time swapping newborns, but she had never had the opportunity to do it with two different genders to avoid being caught. And not only did she swap kids with different genders this time around, but children from completely different backgrounds. A rush of excitement ran through her. This was indeed a special day. Mrs. Florence had first insisted that her gender reveal scan told her she was going to have a baby boy, but the doctor on duty had told her that they weren't always 100% accurate, while Ngozi, on her part, who had opted to not know the sex of her baby, had opened her arms to receive the baby boy she was handed. Nurse Rebecca had always told herself it was a harmless thrill. After all, babies never remember their first days, do they? 18 years later, the story of Cynthia Okeke and Ikenna Chukwuma began, for all the world to see, as an ordinary one. Both children grew up in different corners of Lagos, their lives shaped by the families that raised them. Cynthia, raised as the cherished only daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Okeke, was everything her parents dreamed of, bright, curious, and fiercely independent. Her mother Florence was her world. The laughter, the Sunday shopping trips, the late-night talks over steaming cups of tea. Cynthia's father, a man with a gentle voice and tired eyes, doted on his little star. Her home was filled with books, playdates, light, and easy affection. On the other side of the city, Ikenna grew up under the watchful gaze of Ngozi and her mother, Mama Grace. They were not wealthy, but what they lacked in cash, they made up for in warmth. Ikenna was their miracle boy, quick-witted, responsible beyond his years, his mother's pride and his grandmother's comfort. He learned early that life was not always fair, but that hard work and kindness could open almost any door. Both were ordinary, and yet not. Both carried the invisible weight of a night neither could remember. It was in the sprawling lecture halls of Victoria University, a prestigious private university on the island, that fate would begin to tighten its web. Cynthia, newly admitted to study mass communication, walked with the confident stride of someone who had been told all her life that the world belonged to her. Ikenna, on the other hand, was there on a partial scholarship for engineering. He moved with quieter energy, earnest, focused, but always with a smile for anyone who needed it. The two met over a shared group assignment in their general studies class. Cynthia, impatient with her group's disorganization, took charge, giving everyone direction on what to do and when to turn their work in. Ikenna, on his own part, sat in a corner watching her and wondering how someone could be so outspoken, fearless and yet soft in her approach. He offered suggestions when he could, but did more of listening than talking in the group. It was Cynthia who first noticed him. "He doesn't talk much, but when he does, everyone listens," she told her roommate one evening, her voice teasing, but her eyes soft with curiosity. Ikenna, on his part, found himself talking to his roommate about Cynthia. "She's fierce," he admitted to his friend Chucks, "but she's not arrogant. She actually cares about the work." They didn't become friends instantly. Like the best stories, it was a slow burn, study sessions that ran late, inside jokes over suya and coke from the campus kiosk, the occasional clash of opinions. Sometimes they disagreed so passionately that the rest of the group would glance nervously between them, unsure if they were fighting or flirting. One evening, after yet another long study session, rain began to fall. Lagos rain, unpredictable, wild, just like the one that fell on the night they came into the world. They ran together to the hostel, Cynthia holding her file over her head, laughing as she splashed through puddles. Ikenna, usually so careful, gave up trying to stay dry. By the time they reached shelter, they were both soaked, breathless, and grinning like children. In that moment, something shifted. A glance lingered a second too long. Cynthia's cheeks flushed, and she looked away shyly. Ikenna's voice was gentle. "You know you're different from anyone I've met." Cynthia smiled. "You too. You actually listen and you see me unlike others who consider me arrogant just because I am outspoken." The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of group work, late-night phone calls, and shared meals. Everyone on their floor could see it. The way Cynthia would search for Ikenna's face in a crowded hall, the way he would light up when she entered a room. One afternoon, sitting under the big mango tree beside the university library, Cynthia confessed, almost in a whisper, "Sometimes I feel like I've known you all my life." Ikenna's smile was soft, uncertain. "Me too. Strange, right?" Their hands brushed, lingered, and then finally fingers entwined. The world seemed to pause. Cynthia moved closer and rested her head on Ikenna's shoulder as they both took in the moment. But beneath the blushes and laughter, fate was stirring. Something about Ikenna nagged at Mrs. Florence Okiki when Cynthia first showed her his picture during a mid-semester break. There was something in the shape of his jaw, the tilt of his smile, something that pulled at old memories. But Florence couldn't quite put her finger on it. At night, Florence would sometimes wake from restless dreams, haunted by the echo of a crying baby in a hospital nursery. She would brush off the feeling as paranoia. After all, the past was the past. Her Cynthia was her Cynthia. But something was coming. The old web spun on that rainy night at Oasis Medical Center was about to unravel. And Nurse Rebecca, after 2 decades of impunity, was about to face her reckoning. The semester rolled on, and with it, the campus of Victoria University bloomed into its usual chaos. Assignments, elections, whispered rumors, and fleeting crushes. For Cynthia and Ikenna, the world shrank and expanded all at once. Their friendship was the sort that left even the most skeptical classmates with secret smiles. People watched them from afar, whispered about their closeness, and tried to guess how soon best friends would turn into something more. Yet, if you asked Cynthia, she would claim she wasn't in a hurry. After all, university love was like Lagos traffic, unpredictable, sometimes thrilling, sometimes exhausting. She loved the way Ikenna made her laugh, the gentle way he listened, the quiet determination in his eyes. She loved that he never tried to impress her. He simply was himself. One Saturday evening, as dusk painted the sky in streaks of gold, Cynthia found herself on the rooftop terrace of her hostel, her head on Ikenna's shoulder. They watched the distant city lights flicker to life, the gentle hum of life in the air. "Ikenna," she murmured, "do you ever wonder why we met?" He smiled, not moving his head. "Sometimes I think life just lines things up for us, like 2 parallel lines that suddenly decide to meet." Cynthia smiled back, eyes fluttering closed. "I hope we don't become parallel lines again," he laughed, squeezing her hand. "I promise. I'll always find you, even in the next life." It was during the semester break that Florence Okiki's unease began to build. When Cynthia announced she would bring a friend home for the weekend, Florence agreed with little thought. She trusted her daughter. But when she opened the door to find Ikenna standing beside Cynthia, backpack slung over one shoulder, polite smile in place, Florence felt the world tilt. He was polite, warm, and thoughtful. He offered to help in the kitchen, washed up without being asked, even charmed her husband with his knowledge of football. But there was something about the set of his jaw, the spark in his eyes. It was unsettling. Florence found herself staring at him, her mind spinning. He looked familiar, almost painfully so, but she couldn't place it. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Florence sat at the dining table, her tea growing cold. She searched through old family photos, hoping to find an answer. The more she looked, the more unsettled she became. The next morning, she pulled out a faded photograph from Cynthia's first birthday. In the background, a nurse in a crisp white uniform stood by, her face half turned to the camera. Florence traced her finger over the image, her heart racing. It was even a miracle that she was in the picture. Cynthia has had some developmental issue growing up that has required the hospital to assign a private nurse to them. She would have to dig deeper. Back on campus, Cynthia and Ikenna found comfort in each other. They grew bolder in their affection, no longer hiding from their friends or themselves. On one lazy Sunday afternoon, they laid on the grass beneath the mango tree, with their books pushed to a corner. "Ikenna," Cynthia whispered, "what's your biggest fear?" He turned to look at her, the sun casting golden halos around her curls. "You look beautiful," he whispered as she blushed. "Okay, now to my biggest fear, that would be losing the people I love, or becoming someone I don't recognize," he said. She nodded, thoughtful. "Sometimes I'm scared I'm not living the life I'm supposed to. Like I was meant for something else. Somewhere else." He reached out, tracing gentle circles on her palm. "I think we find our purpose as life goes on, a little here and a little there, till we are able to fit in the puzzles." "Let's get back to our book," Biko Ikenna said finally. Meanwhile, Florence's curiosity became obsession. She visited Oasis Medical Center, requesting old records from 20 years ago. The admin staff was hesitant, but Florence pressed on, her determination unwavering. She finally managed to view the birth register and photographs of staff on duty the night Cynthia was born. There it was, the same woman in the old photo, Nurse Rebecca. Florence's heart raced as she jotted down details, piecing together a puzzle she hadn't even known existed. At home, she compared the photos, Nurse Rebecca's sharp features, her distant eyes, but it was Ikenna's resemblance to her husband that haunted her most. There was no denying it, the dimple, the smile, even the arch of his brow. She decided to talk to her husband. That night, as the city outside faded into darkness, Florence sat beside her husband and showed him the photographs. "Do you see it?" she whispered. He stared at the photo, eyes widening. "That boy, he looks just like me." A chill swept through the room. The Okekis were not people given to wild suspicions, but Florence's growing certainty unsettled them both. They decided quietly to ask Cynthia if she would be willing to take a DNA test, and also ask if Ikenna would be interested in taking one. Cynthia was confused at first. A DNA test? What for? "There is nothing to be worried about," her father had told her. "Your mom and I just need to confirm some things." When she told Ikenna, he was surprised, but also oddly accepting. "My mother always told me I was a miracle," he laughed. "Maybe I'm just about to find out why." The samples were collected, sent off, and the waiting began. A silent, tense week in which Cynthia and Ikenna held hands a little tighter, their laughter quieter, their eyes searching for answers in each other's faces. For Nurse Rebecca, the past 20 years had been a blur of uniforms, hospital corridors, and secrets buried deep. She had always believed herself too clever to be caught. But lately, rumors had started to spread. A new hospital administrator was reviewing old records and questions were being asked. One afternoon, she noticed Florence in the lobby, speaking to the admin staff. Panic fluttered in her chest. She remembered Florence, the woman who insisted on her child being a male, and also the woman she was assigned to look after her daughter for some months. She also remembered the thrill of that long-ago night, the satisfaction of a secret no one else would ever know. But now it looks the past was clawing its way to the surface. On campus, Cynthia and Ikenna grew restless. The tension was palpable, even as they tried to focus on their exams. One evening, after a long study session, Cynthia burst into tears. Ikenna pulled her into his arms, holding her as she sobbed. "I'm scared, Ikenna. What if we're not who we think we are?" He stroked her hair, his voice soft. "No matter what the DNA says, you're still Cynthia. You're still the girl I fell in love with. That won't change." She clung to him, drawing strength from his steadiness. It was a lesson in love, real love, the kind that survives storms and doubts. The envelope arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Florence called Cynthia home, her hands shaking as she opened the results. She read the words once, twice, 3 times. It was true. Cynthia was not their biological daughter. A second test with Ikenna confirmed what Florence feared. Ikenna was their son. The room was silent, the air heavy with shock. Cynthia sat quietly, her hands clenched in her lap. Ikenna stared at the wall, his mind racing. The world they knew had shifted forever. If you've watched to this stage, thank you. And don't forget to drop a like and also hit the subscribe button. So what do you think will happen next? Will Cynthia and Ikenna's relationship survive what is coming? Will their parents allow them continue with the relationship? And most importantly, how do you think the two families would resolve this? Hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you can be alerted once the concluding part drops on Sunday. Thank you for watching.